Imagine a fan, you're the biggest fan of something, and you get to take over the franchise. That's what Henry Cavill had in
Y- y-
Warhammer,
you
and
know
that
what Cavill should take over, Rob, is Marvel, because Captain Falcon is apparently in trouble, guys. Have you heard about this? This is crazy. Okay, so we all know that
Still?
Tom's famous thing is like, oh, they just reshot three things: the first act, the second act, and the third act. But so this has gone through two retitles, four reshoots, entirely new casting of a villain, and apparently it just came out this week that they had their latest test screening of Captain America: Brave New World, and apparently the test screening was still disastrous. Apparently, test audiences didn't like this movie, and so now Marvel is scrambling to basically do like another reshoot, like 2-3 months out of this movie being released. And so there's a lot of speculation that this movie is going to be worked on right up to the last minute. People are running around like chickens with their heads cut off over at Marvel. They don't know what to do because this is supposed to launch off the next phase. It's supposed to be Anthony Mackie as like the linchpin of the Marvel universe and all this other stuff. Now, Rob, I would love to hear your take on this because you've just based off of your Twitter feed, you got a lot to say. So let's hear it.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. Movies, I think what's happened to the Marvel cinema, I think someone's going to write a book soon, or maybe in 10 years, that no one has gone off the rails more than Marvel has since the end of Endgame, and even more so than Star Wars. Marvel had a winning formula that over the better part of 15 years, everything they did built off the next thing. They were building this carefully constructed cinematic universe. I was incredulous back in 2008. I was like, okay, so Iron Man comes out. I think Iron Man surprised everybody. You go back and you watch Iron Man 1 now, it is a delightful movie. It is a story of one man coming to grips with himself. He grows a conscience. He creates this Iron Man technology, and we believe it. We watch him build it, and it comes down to him fighting one dude, Obadiah Stane, who's stolen his technology. And I couldn't believe that they made Captain America and Thor and Iron Man work and built up to the Avengers 5 years later or 4 years later. Amazing. Amazing. And then taking us all the way to Infinity War and Endgame, the rewatchability of those movies is off the charts. Those movies remain wildly entertaining to me. Like The Godfather, if they're playing on cable or something, I come across them, I can't not watch them. Those characters are beloved. They've interacted. Those movies are so much fun. Since then, nothing has built to anything. And like they have all these dangling plot threads that they've never dealt with. They don't seem to be going anywhere. The Marvel Cinematic Universe has just meandered around. And then you get to Anthony Mackie as Falcon is a beloved character. People loved him as Falcon. When you first meet Anthony Mackie, go back and watch Winter Soldier. When you meet him in the beginning of the movie, the on your left scene when he first meets Cap and they're jogging around the mall and Anthony Mackie's got, man, do you have to do that? And they meet. You love that guy. You love that character. And who doesn't love Anthony Mackie? And then famously, you've got Falcon and Winter Soldier. Bucky should have been Captain America. Bucky should have taken up the mantle. Bucky is a super soldier.
100%.
You can't even, if you're not a super soldier, how can you throw that shield and catch it?
He's got a cool arm that would go perfect with that shield, you know?
I mean, you look at
absolute sense.
A human
I can
being,
see the toys.
A human being would try and capture that. Anthony Mackie, it would shatter his arm. Just catching that, the vibration would. So immediately, by making it has nothing to do with his race. It has to do with he's a human being. A human being. That's it. And so now they're giving. I understand wanting to make him. I liked how you had Carl Lumley talking about they're never going to accept you as Captain America. That was an interesting, legitimate thread to follow. I mean, I like that debate. But the fact is, Anthony Mackie, the character of Falcon, that was his own character. That's right out of the comic books. When I was a kid, I loved Captain America and Falcon. I had the Power Records. I loved Falcon. I loved the actor who played Falcon. I loved his voice. And I loved Anthony Mackie as the Falcon. I understand the impetus for making him Captain America. You can say, oh, it happened in the comics, all this stuff. But it doesn't work within the universe that they set up. And I mean, when you have Red Hulk smashing down on Captain America's shield, you're like Anthony Mackie, a human being. Now, I get it. His new suit is made by the Wakandans or whatever it is, but he's still a human being. And you're watching him in the trailer doing things that he can't do that. His wings are ripping through. I can understand the vibranium ripping through a car, but that doesn't protect him from the explosion that's happening around him and all this stuff that's going on. And I'll bet you when he lands on the ground and a sonic boom comes down behind him and blows out the people that are, and he's fine. I mean, you watch the trailer. I sit there and I'm like, I don't buy it. I don't buy it. And I think that the people are watching the movie. I don't think they buy it either. Clearly, the question is, why isn't this movie working? We've done, is this the 4th round of reshoots?
Yep.
This is a studio problem. This is a script problem. It's on the page, and they should have recognized it from the very beginning. The problem is, and it's still, I think, a vestige of trying to shove a square peg in a round hole. They're trying to make Sam Wilson work as Captain America, and it might work in the pages of a comic for a while, but it doesn't work on screen. You don't buy it. And everybody knows it. And I think in the back of everyone's mind is Bucky is a super soldier.
Right.
He does have, as Tom said, the arm. That's the obvious thing to do. And you know what? The thing is, Falcon as the caretaker of the Captain America legacy, that would be really interesting. It could have been Sam that's saying to Bucky, I don't think you have what it takes to be Captain America. I understand, but what you've done over the last 30 years as the Winter Soldier, do you have what it takes? I don't think you do. You need to earn it, and that could have been the whole thing. And that Sam Wilson is the caretaker of the legacy of Captain America, and can Bucky live up to it? And then you have their friendship develop. They could be at odds with one another, but there's respect. And Sam, and you realize that Bucky's going through this whatever trauma he's going through, and he's the one that has to live. It could have been a great frisson, a great friendship. It could have been really the core of the MCU moving forward, the heart of what a new Avengers movie could be. That after going through the crucible of Brave New World, you could have had an awesome situation moving forward.
And I want to throw this to Brian, because Brian's our comic book expert. He runs multiple channels about comic books and comic book movies and all that stuff. Brian, you and Rob were kind of talking about this before the show started, where you're in lockstep with him about Sam not being a super soldier and all this other stuff. One of the interesting things about this article at thatparkplace.com, which, by the way, great resource. They talked about how there are so many Hulk characters in this movie that they're like, why isn't this a Hulk movie at this point? So I want to get your take on this. Why do you think there's so many reshoots going on with this movie?
Well, they're not allowed to make a Hulk movie. I'm not sure if you know that. Yeah, they're not. They're legally not allowed to make a Hulk movie.
I think that lapsed, but yeah, that could still be in effect.
They can use Hulk in a movie, but they can't.
Yeah, but I still think that lapsed, but it was just in the title anyway. But yeah,
right.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think the reshoots are because even normies are confused. Imagine if you're a Marvel fan, you know nothing about the comics, you know nothing about Bucky or who's supposed to be Captain America, and you're just like, I'm a fan of Marvel, I'm a fan of Falcon. Imagine you're doing screeners, and the first thing I would ask, even as a normie, I'd be like, well, how is he fighting the Hulk? That'd be the first thing I would ask.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right? How is that? How is he doing? Isn't he like a regular dude? Like, yeah, he fights. He's in shape. He has a cool robot thing or whatever, but he's a regular guy, right? Like, how's he doing that? The first thing I asked. I think that enough people must have asked this very simple question where they were like, okay, we gotta, if he's Captain America, we gotta make him Captain America.
It's like, I want to see him fight Thor now, because apparently he can stand up to Thor and Hulk, and probably put him on that war planet and put him in the arena.
Bro, he's fighting
Jeff Goldblum.
The Red Hulk. A human can't do that. I'm sorry.
He'd be a red pile of goo on the bottom of the pot.
Yeah, and there's this moment in the trailer where he has this really cool shot, by the way. And by the way, I like Mackie. I like him a lot.
Sure,
I do too.
I like the actor a lot. Twisted Metal is one of my favorite things on streaming right now. He's a really cool character. Altered Carbon, great actor. But there's this moment in the trailer where he flips his wings around and saws through a car or whatever, and there's molten metal everywhere. Right? And I remember watching that, I'm like, guy would be on fire right now.
Yeah.
Like he would just be a pile of ash. Him throwing the shield, catching the shield. No, none of that makes
But
sense.
Brian, he has on a special suit from Wakanda
No, but
that lets him do all this stuff,
no,
right?
it's not. It's definitely not enough. Like maybe if he was like full robot form, I would buy it more. But like
Brian, he's got black girl magic. So
I would tell you right now, I would bet anyone here $50 that in the first 20 minutes of the movie, in the first 15 minutes of the movie, it's revealed that he in some way takes the super soldier serum.
Or they just shoot a scene
I've
where
been
he
saying
does.
that for a while. I've been saying that for a while.
Yeah, he might just shoot that. You're right. They might just shoot a scene. I mean, like, and maybe it could be some convoluted thing where he doesn't want to take it, but then he's forced to because whatever. He's 100%, in my opinion, going to be a super soldier. And there's already some hints of that because the Red Hulk is a bastardization of the super soldier serum, right, Rob?
Right.
yeah,
Yes,
and
it
the
is.
Thinker is a character in the show to formulate the type of thing.
So they have the super soldier serum. They must have the original formula. He must take it.
Well, Wade, Kurt Russell's son, he's a super soldier, isn't he?
no, he's
Or
not.
is he
He's
not?
just a regular Marine.
Did they not make him? Okay. Oh, you're right. Yeah.
Oh,
But
wait. The guy from the
From Falcon and Winter Soldier. Wade.
Yeah, I thought he had superpowers. or whatever.
Wyatt
No,
Russell.
No, U.S. agent played by Wyatt Russell. He's in the Thunderbolts movie. No, he was just a highly trained soldier. That's all he was. So
I thought he took the
That was super misleading.
no, I think he might have almost taken that one kind of like booster drug that they had in Falcon Winter Soldier. But
yeah.
The one they had in Agents of Shield where they made the temporary director of
yeah, but
Shield.
it was temporary, and I don't think he ended up like getting actual powers from it. But I want to throw this to Odin. Odin, one of the interesting things about this article is that they mentioned the cost of this movie and the cost of all these reshoots because they have had to do extensive reshoots on this thing. And they're saying that the budget of this movie could be close to $500 million. And at that point, this movie needs to make $1 billion just to break even, right? So what's your take on the economics behind all these reshoots that they're doing?
I mean, it's looking bad. I mean, that's really the only thing they have left, and it's kind of this it's like the snake eating its own tail, right? It's destroying itself because they know that this movie, even from the beginning before the reshoots, it was going to have cost a lot of money. I think the initial cost was around $250 million or so. And then the one that's still most widely reported is between $350 and $400 million. Now there's some speculation that could be even more than that. And this is all before marketing costs too. So keep in mind that they're going to probably spend quite a bit on that. And why is it that they're doing all the reshoots? Why is it that they're going to spend as much money on marketing? Because they have to. But again, it's the self-defeating thing because the more they spend, the more they have to make. But they still have to make so much money, right? Even at $350 million, you're still talking about a movie that needs to make about $1 billion. Like when you're talking about a $500 million, if it actually ends up being a $500 million budgeted movie, we're talking about a movie that's going to have to make almost $1.5 billion to break even, depending on where it makes its money, right? It depends on how much it makes domestically versus internationally. Ultimately, though, we know this movie is not going to do that in either case. This is not right now set up to be $1 billion film. Marvel is not in a very good state right now. One could obviously say, well, what about Deadpool Wolverine? That's a very clear, rare case that's kind of in its own universe, right? It's a huge event movie that has a lot of the cameos, but also it's an event movie that was built up well and marketed well. And it also had obviously a high budget, but one that they clearly knew what they were spending it on, and they spent it pretty well. And that film has continued to do well post-theatrical as well. And right now, there's nothing to indicate that anyone has any interest in this specific movie. And so the more they spend, the deeper the hole they dig for themselves. And in all honesty, I just don't know exactly what would be the best thing for them to do financially because they have to make money on this, but they're not. And so they have to spend more money to try to make more money. And again, this is ever defeating process. And it's kind of amazing to see because it just, again, shows you that just like with Star Wars and Marvel, there's also this Emperor Has No Clothes reveal happening as well.
What was the movie? What movie have they done that had the most reshoots prior to this? Was it like Rogue One maybe, or Or,
Well, let's say like when it comes to Marvel, honestly, I don't really remember as much. I don't remember this being as big of a conversation. Like with Disney, it's been notorious. Like from the beginning, since Disney took over, since Kathleen Kennedy took over, reshoots has been the name of the game. With Disney, this is the first time that I can remember. Obviously, there could easily be. I wouldn't be surprised.
Ant-Man?
For instance, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there was Ant-Man or if even a Multiverse of Madness. Especially Multiverse of Madness after the success of Spider-Man, right? Where reshoots were a thing. But I feel like this is definitely the most that we've ever heard about it, and this is now
This is
Star
like
Wars level
Flash all over
reshoots.
again.
But,
Yeah.
but like with Rogue One, they reshot the movie because it was too dark. It was too much of a war film, and at least that's what I remember hearing at the time. And that to me is I think legitimate. And there's that one shot of the TIE fighter coming up in the trailer that wasn't in the finished film, and I could see that. They brought in Tony Gilroy
right.
the same way he helped out Gareth Edwards on Godzilla. Tony Gilroy is an Academy Award winning who now he has the reins over on Andor, and did season 1 and is doing season 2. I just think that what's odd is, and I think that Kathleen Kennedy, everyone, I don't think she's the only person to blame. I think a lot of it has to do with Disney and Disney on high. They have this brand that they have to maintain, and Star Wars is so key to whether it's theme parks. Disney failed that hotel, the Star Wars themed hotel. That was even a more epic failure than any of the Star Wars movies was.
Yeah, and we're
Correct.
actually going to talk a little bit more about Disney in a second, but I want to throw this to Tom. Tom, you famously joked that they only reshot 3 things, the first act, second act, and third act. But at the same time, like the defense for all these reshoots has always been like, oh, reshoots are just a natural part of the movie making process, the movie scheduling process. Reshoots are always baked into the film. But this is the 4th time that they're going back to reshoot this stuff. Like, at what point do they just pull a Batgirl on this thing and just say like, oh, this is just a tax write-off now?
Well, unfortunately, I think you have all sorts of sides to this here, because the time to write this off and get rid of it was long gone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unfortunately, you're stuck into this thing. You're signed into it. There's all sorts of contracts and other things involved. But I mean, honestly, if I was Disney and Marvel at that point, I would have used the strikes, the shutdowns, all those things to kind of recalibrate everything, and they didn't. So they've done this to themselves, right? Because there's one thing, you guys are talking about the whole movie itself. I'll bring up this image I got here in the background. This is one of my major issues. You guys are right. He either has to get the super serum or this is bullshit. There is no way that he could withstand that.
Nope.
I don't care what he's wearing. He is pudding after that. Sorry.
Yep.
That's just a fucking fact. And then I had one more thing, because here's the other reason why I think this movie's coming no matter what. If you guys remember, McDonald's dropped these already a year ago, almost. And that was McDonald's basically telling you, no, Marvel, we're not moving again. Because they probably already moved twice, and they said, no, we've got something else coming up at that slot, and we're not moving it for you. So there's another reason why these movies are coming out, because they have all these deals in place already. They're all done and over with. This is going to be like a producer's by the end of the day. The only thing they're going to be able to benefit out of this is they won't have to pay any residuals out, because they will be able to say, no, the movie lost money, so nobody's going to get any money out of this thing. But what it is going to do is going to damage the Marvel brand even further, make it more difficult for DC to get back off the ground. And I mean, if I was Kevin Feige right now, I would try to be re-establishing this whole thing. Honestly, at this point, he's admitted enough defeat. I don't know why he just doesn't do a 0-hour reset, right? Like, you had your opportunity 3 times now. Why haven't you? And they're kind of quasi getting, I think that's what the Fantastic Four is going to do. Because if they're dragging them over from another multiverse, something's going to happen there that's going to finally combine all the multiverses with Secret Wars or whatever. It's going to happen at some point, because they got to get themselves back into some sort of streamline. Because Robert's right, that first phase was brilliant. The reason it was brilliant is because the movies led to something, but they weren't predicated on those things. Now we have a problem where Doctor Strange, if you haven't seen WandaVision and all these other TV shows, you're fucking lost. I guarantee you, if you haven't seen the stupid Winter Soldier show, you're going to be lost going into this movie.
Mhm.
That's a problem. Your shows should not predicate your movies, right? Because at least they got it right with S.H.I.E.L.D. up front. S.H.I.E.L.D. was a show that could be affected by the movies, but never affected the movies.
Yeah, exactly.
Ever. For the very simple fact that your TV audience and your movie audience are very different people in some cases. Sure, there's crossover there, don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, you're going to get a lot of people who just go to see these movies and don't care about these TV shows because they don't have 12 hours to spend watching WandaVision. They just don't. And they don't care about WandaVision. It's not in their, they don't give a shit. You know, or She-Hulk. Why should they care about a character they've never met before? They don't
Right.
care. And I get it. We as nerds, we care. We love these things. But as the general audience goes, they are not on board with this thing. This is going to be one of the biggest flops since the Marvels. Because nobody's going to go see it. Captain Falcon, look, Robert's right. He was already a famous character. In fact, I had a vintage poster from like the 70s or 80s that had Falcon on the poster already back then. He was one of the more prominent black characters. So you can't sit here and tell me that there weren't black characters in comic books before, because we can name a handful of them right now, and that's leaving out the X-Men. Right? So the point being is they're trying to virtue signal, have their cake and eat it too, but you can't at the end of the day. The obvious answer was what Robert said, was to hand the shield off to Bucky. If anything, the Captain America 4 we all want to see is what happened when Cap went to put those stones back. There's 100 years of history there. We have no idea what happened.
Yeah.
No idea. And he's going to come face to face again with the Red Skull, and the Red Skull's going to be like, I'm not the same guy you met, by the way.
No,
So that's going to be an interesting conversation.
Well,
we
you know,
needed an Agatha show. We needed
We need an Agatha show. We need all this other garbage nobody gives two shits about. Exactly.
well, that's another
And-
thing to follow up on your point. You know, one of the interesting things that I thought would have been worthy of exploration is in the 5 years after Thanos snapped his fingers, you hear in Endgame that Captain Marvel makes she says the rest of the universe is falling apart too. You know, every planet is like Earth. It's a mess. And I was always like, okay, if you're going to do a second Captain Marvel movie, look, I admit it. I didn't love, but I liked the first Captain Marvel movie. I liked it. I didn't hate it. I thought it was a pretty good science fiction thriller, you know, that sort of introduced the Skrulls and whatever. But you could have made an Empire Strikes Back movie where a character like Captain Marvel and you saw what she was off facing, and you could have made some big crucible of a movie where she had a horrible, you know, a planet's in the middle of civil war, people are being ravaged, whatever, and she has to step in and figure out how to solve a problem. Make something really interesting, personal to her, that really bolstered that character, that made Captain America or Captain Marvel a character that really belonged in the MCU. But instead, they made this goofy, silly movie where all the themes of the first Captain Marvel were jettisoned. And they turned it into this like goofy film and brought back, you know, look, I love Black Captain Marvel. She was a badass. I love Monica Rambeau. I loved her in the 80s when I was reading Avengers comics. I loved her uniform and all that. And I even loved her the way she was portrayed, the character was portrayed in WandaVision. But to take a $1 billion movie and throw in Miss Marvel and another character, whose idea was that? Like you took $1 billion, literally a movie that grossed $1 billion, whether you like Captain Marvel or not, from box office perspective, you took $1 billion movie. And then you added these two TV characters to it, like Tom was just saying, that nobody knew who they were if you didn't watch, especially if you didn't watch Miss Marvel. And then the movie, the tone of that movie is wacky. From the opening scene when the villain's going down on it looks like the set from Superman 2. Not to besmirch Superman 2, but the lunar set in Superman 2 from 1981, a movie from 2022 should not, or 2023 should not look like that set from 40 years ago. And I'm watching this. I'm watching this movie going, what is this? And the same was true of Thor: Love and Thunder.
And there's a reason why those movies underperformed at the box office. And going back to Tom's point, if you didn't watch WandaVision and you didn't see Miss Marvel, the TV show, you know, you'd be lost as to like who these characters are.
Well, that movie was kind of the pinnacle of all that, right? Because you had at least 3 or 4 shows that if you didn't watch them,
I want to get
too much homework.
Lost.
Yeah, I want to get Mr. Butters' take on this though, because you know, Mr. Butters, we forced ourselves to watch Falcon and Winter Soldier during lockdown.
Yeah, I barely remember it.
That show was a piece of garbage. And when it comes to like when it comes to this, it's like, are you going to bother going to see this in the theater? Are you even going to bother to see it when it comes out
No.
on Disney Plus eventually?
I don't know. I honestly I don't have an answer to your question because I don't know. I don't know what it's going to take to get me back into the theaters right now. The last movie I can remember watching in the theater was Furiosa, and that was a while ago now. And you know, there just hasn't been a whole lot come out that I've been all that interested in. And you know, we haven't been doing a lot of movie reviews, and even before that, a lot of the movies that I was watching were movies that I was watching only that we could talk about on the podcast, because a lot of this stuff just is not piquing my interest.
Go
at
see
all.
Nora if
So
you can.
okay,
It has nothing to do with genre or
Nosferatu's
anything like
coming.
that. Can't wait to see
So-
that.
Nosferatu.
so you know, I personally I'm just kind of burned out on superhero movies, and I'm not sure what it's going to take to get me back into the theater. You know, even TV's been super hit and miss for me lately. You know, I'm watching that Arcane show on TV. It's not really my thing, but I'm enjoying parts of it. You know, stuff like Silo just started back up. I like the first episode. I haven't seen anything past the first episode of season 2 yet, though. Penguin, you know, that's supposed to be really good, but I'm not all the way through it yet. It's just, I don't know what it's going to take to get me back into the theaters right now. This certainly is not it.